baby. Go, sexy. Show me some.
Taking it as Bergeron, nicely able to step away. From Winnipeg, they score!
Here's a chance. Potter right in, and goalie scores. Oh my, what a move by the rookie.
2-on-1, Pasternak moving in with Marchand, get into it, score!
Into the zone, Hoyle dances in, backhand, score!
Lindholm, right wing corner. Pasternak is there. He scores! David Pasternak wins it for Boston.
Their execution was really good. Our execution was really poor. I can't pinpoint why we look slow, but we look slow the entire game. Could have reloaded better. We could have had an F3 on the strong side better, and our defensemen should have read the rush better. Korpisalo was not a problem tonight. It was the people in front of him.
Well, those are some pretty strong words from our head coach, Jim Montgomery. Welcome in to another episode of Bruins Tape to Tape. I'm your host this week, Caroline, and happy start of the season to my fantastic co-host, Maria. Welcome in.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a bit of a womp start for the Boston Bruins, but I'm sure we'll get to that.
We will. And it was quite a busy first day of the hockey season around the league. And so first and foremost, we want to welcome in our new listeners. For those of you who have been past listeners from the previous season, but maybe you were taking a break, because I don't blame you. It's not like the summer was very exciting. So we are two diehard Bruins fans, and we love to talk hockey. We'll talk a little bit about what's going on in the league, because we believe it's important to be informed about things that may or may not impact our favorite team, the Boston Bruins. And so this year, we will be recording on Wednesdays for the most part. In the past, we've been on Tuesdays, but just because of the fact that the Bruins have the most Tuesday night games of any team in the league this season. So you'll probably be catching us on Wednesdays, and basically every 3 games or so, maybe 4, you'll get to hear from us. So let's dive right into all of the big happenings since we last got to chat, Maria. Of course, the biggest news pre-season, we finally have Jeremy Swayman committed for 8 years. How do you feel about this 8 times $8.25 deal? How many games do you need to see Jeremy Swayman start to feel good about this deal?
I think call me crazy, but it might be a little bit of an overpay, but they got the deal done.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see him play between 60 and 70 games this season to earn that contract.
Bold.
I know,
bold.
But
that's a big
listen,
jump.
You want to be the number one guy.
Yep.
You have said that you want to be the number one guy. You've made no bones about it. And as I heard Ryan Whitney say today on their Spittin' Chicklets podcast, you better play some good fucking hockey for that kind of money.
No doubt in my mind. I think the general sentiment that I've seen across Bruins Nation has been people are pleased. Maybe it seems like a bit of an overpay today, maybe this season, but it's probably going to age pretty well considering how the cap is going up and you know, whatever your opinion may be about his statements and his comments about resetting the goalie market. The fact of the matter is he has reset this goalie market. because as some around the rink news, we won't go into a ton of details because this is not a New York Rangers podcast, but we do know that Igor Shesterkin has already said no to the first offer by the New York Rangers. And we know that the New York Rangers are probably going to be in a very similar cap situation, even with the cap increase come next summer. So I hope that they were taking notes because they're going to have to pay.
Share with our
even
audience
more.
what he said, what Igor said no to.
Well, I believe, and you have to correct me if I'm wrong, it was over $10 million.
Close to $11 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said no.
And you know what? I mean, actually, I think it was a 8 times 11, 88. So, well, like I said, we won't get into that, but let's face it, no matter what you think about why Jeremy Swayman did what he did, the fact of the matter is he has done that. And the other breaking goalie news from today, former Boston Bruin Linus Ullmark signed his deal, extending his time in Ottawa, which I think we were all thinking, okay, if he didn't extend back in July, surely he must be planning on waiting to see how things turn out with the Senators, which again, nobody would blame him. But our friend up there in the North signed a 4-year deal for $8.25 million a year, which, Maria, I would love to hear your opinion on that. Considering, Jeremy Swayman, that's what he got. What do you think about that?
Brothers. I mean,
Yeah.
what I do,
think
you
it's
do,
fair.
what you do, I do. And, Jeremy wanted to set the market. So perhaps he has set the market. And to your point, yes, down the road, this is going to look like a fabulous deal for the Boston Bruins, because I'm looking at the contract summary that I've picked up from a site called sportskedia.com, which is just provides you a summary. It's an 8-year term. It starts 2024, finishes in 2032. Total value $66 million. Average annual value, 8.25. Signing or performance bonuses total $23 million, and it includes no trade clause. The no move clause comes into play in years 2026 through 2030. That's
next season, in 2 seasons from now.
Right. Okay. That's a full no move clause. 2030, 2031. It's a 10-team approved trade list.
Which is, so for our listeners who maybe are a little bit newer to hockey, it's not unheard of to have that list be a thing later in a contract. What I will say is that's a short list. Typically you might see it start out at 15,
16,
12,
we've had those.
Move down to 12. Like it changes. Like once that starts, then it starts to, that number starts to change one way or the other. And so for the fact that his list starts at 10, that is thin. That's interesting. I think good find on that one. So,
and the salary becomes a bit team friendlier with each passing year. So I give credit to him standing Jeremy by the principle that he wants to be here. He wants to be a Bruin pretty much for life. He seems committed to his craft. But, for me, as with any of these professional athletes that we watch, support, spend some of our own resources to go and watch and support. The proof is in the performance for me.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
And there have been instances where players, You
Oh,
know,
yeah,
it
they
takes them a
don't.
while to earn their contract, or some of them never do earn their contract. So
Yep.
I don't think that this is the case. I think the
Mhm.
general sentiment around the league is that he's a hell of a goalie, and
Yeah.
he's going to be a hell of a goalie for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, what he's done for goaltenders across the league is actually pretty, what he and Shesterkin both together are going to accomplish, because you've got two different types of goaltenders. You've got raising the floor for RFA, talented RFAs, because, he's not the first and he's not the last, right? Lots of people talk about Jeremy Swayman and Jake Ottinger in the same breath, because not only are they quite literally, I think they're the same age. They played, they came up in a lot of the same pathways to the NHL. And so, you know, those types of players have existed and do deserve to get paid good money if they are young players. And then for Shesterkin, I mean, he's just going to raise the bar. And, we've talked a lot about this in the Discord, and I've shared this video and I'll put it in the show notes again, but the Hockey Guy has a fantastic YouTube video kind of calling into question, why have we always undervalued goaltenders as the position from a paycheck perspective, when people will say arguably goaltenders are the most important player on the ice, because the old saying, defense wins cups, goalies win cups, right? So if you've got a goaltender who is, the Connor McDavid of goaltenders, I'm not saying that's what Jeremy Swayman is, let's be clear, but if you have one like Igor Shesterkin, why is he not making Connor McDavid money, Austin Matthews money?
Well, the contrarian
Right.
argument to that by some is
Mhm.
that you can go out and get yourself a good goalie without having to invest that kind of money.
Mhm.
What you want to have happen is that your goalie gets hot in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So you get yourself into the playoffs, right? And I'm not saying this is my argument.
Sure,
I've
sure,
just
sure.
heard enough, and again, this is, opinions from, talk radio show pundits who say, hey, look at this team. They're only paying their goalie $4 million, but look, he got hot at the right
Right.
time. Why
Right.
do the Boston Bruins need to go out and burn so much cash on a goalie?
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
I mean, I can see both sides of it. I think the difficulty here was that not having a comparable comp
There
for
was
him
not.
because
Mhm.
of the fact that he hadn't played a full season. Now,
Mhm.
given the structure that we currently have,
Mhm.
right? My expectation is you're going to be playing as a true number one
Mhm.
goalie, which means
Yep.
you need to be playing more than what, 50, 56 games. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's got to be, and maybe 70 is extremely aggressive, but
Right.
I'm talking, you got to get into the 60s then. Okay.
Yeah. And I think, certainly I'm in agreement with you in the sentiment, we need to be seeing at least 60%, right? I'm thinking from him this year. So last year, if he played 41, I would expect to see at least 55 from him this year. And I think kind of that's the approach. That's my understanding of the approach, is because he's never done a 60-game season. They want to kind of put him in, but almost do like a load management sort of approach, but, season long load management. So I think folks shouldn't be surprised if he doesn't do more than 55, 60, but I certainly think, and I agree, that then the next year we want to see him playing the same number of games that Connor Hellebuck played, Igor Shesterkin, Jay Guy, all of them, all of those guys. Like, he should be playing the same number of games. And I have no doubt that A, that he wants to, and B, that he probably could, but you don't want to push it too far, because again, now he is this massive investment that the Bruins have to take good care of too. Like, he's a very expensive Fabergé egg.
No, but
Don't be
he's like
chipping
the
it around.
shiny toy though, as you know, but so you can't keep him wrapped up either
No, yeah.
because
Yeah, yeah,
you've
yeah.
invested, right?
Yeah.
So there
Use them, but
needs
appropriately.
right,
Yeah, definitely.
appropriately, effectively, and again, there's always that potential for, you certainly don't want him in a situation where, and we're getting ahead of ourselves, there's a burnout factor as you're approaching playoffs, or
Right.
you have the intention to make a deep playoff run, because I think that's what poor Henrik Lundqvist sustained during his
He was
career.
used too much.
He was way overused, then he just got fried.
He couldn't go any further. No,
Right,
exactly.
right.
So because of this last minute expense, what we find ourselves is that Don Sweeney was now obligated to do a little bit of fancy footwork when it came to the cap. They had to be cap compliant by the start of the season. And so what that meant was you saw a couple of other goalies get placed on waivers. One did get snapped up. It wasn't Brandon Bussey, for those of you who are big fans. But it had to be done. So they've, for the most part, sent down the guys who are going to be sent down. There are 2 that kind of are currently existing in limbo, so to speak. And then you've got a couple of folks who are on SOIR, which I'm going to admit on the pod, Maria, I've been a fan for a long time. And, that the SOIR is a new
terminology.
IR. Yeah, I feel like I've never heard of this.
I want to say I have never heard of this myself, and I've been a hockey fan for a lot longer than you have.
So
we all know LTIR. That's the standard lingo.
Right. Or IR, injured reserve.
All right, correct.
But season opening injury reserve. So this is a newer one, but effectively it's a way that allows them to be cap compliant while they have somebody who's injured, but they're not on the IR and they're not LTIR. So basically all you really need to know is it's a fancy footwork, little creative accounting effectively to stay cap compliant. However, what this also means is we're currently looking at who's our new friend? Oh, I'm blanking on his name. Tyler Johnson.
Tyler Johnson is
kind of hanging out in limbo, which, if you all remember the Danton Heinen situation last year, kind of a similar situation where they quite literally couldn't sign him because they didn't have the $1 million or whatever they were ended up paying him, not a ton, but and they couldn't bring him on for a couple of games. I think someone got injured on the first West Coast mini, like the California trip, and he was then able to get signed on. So we'll see if that kind of happens with Tyler Johnson. I don't know.
Well, it's going to take someone of some. I don't want to be a jinx, but
No.
Before I say that, right now, according to Puckpedia, the Bruins have $145,261 in projected cap space and current cap space of only $146,000.
Yeah, which is not even the league minimum.
It's not even the league minimum. So, someone else could come along and offer Tyler Johnson a contract. And that was the risk that the Bruins took with Danton Heinen. Although maybe, again, there's, somewhat of a wink, wink, nod, nod. If you want the player, or the player wants to be here, or the player has not received any other offers at this time.
Yeah.
But I don't know, unless you're going to be able to move someone off this roster in some way, shape, or form, I'm not seeing how you can bring on Tyler Johnson in the near future here. So
right. No. So he's a question mark, and we were wondering if of the new guys who would still kind of be hanging around. I imagine that they're still kind of trying to decide what to do about Tufte and Koepke. And so in the opener, Koepke did play. I kind of wonder if then we'll see Tufte on Thursday. I mean, it's like an extended tryout still. And I know, I'll have a question for you about preseason and training camp before we dive into the meat of this episode. But as a final kind of real quick look around the rink, Utah finally got going, which I think is a very interesting marketing approach that they have. Definitely being exalted as if they were a brand new expansion team, and not the fact that they are just Arizona.
Right. And the fact that, the commissioner is on national TV getting pats on the back, which, okay, fine. I don't like him. Okay. I'm just going to put that out there. Maria. I don't like him. And, he's been he's being applauded and lauded for resolving a situation that should have been resolved countless years ago.
Yeah, his hand was forced. Like, he didn't want this, really. He didn't want to move the team. But anyways, that aside, good on them.
Good on them. Great. The fan base I watched a little bit of the game. The building was rocking. The place was packed. Yep. They enjoyed the game. They seem excited, enthusiastic. It appears that the players have embraced the fan base there, the city. Yep. They must love having an actual real arena, rink.
Even if there's a huge portion where if you sit, you cannot see the net. So I don't know how that got. It's one or the other, right? Either you're in a place like Mullet Arena or take your pick, right?
So, okay. Gary, you get a golf clap.
Moving on. We'll actually get to see the Boston Bruins play Utah fairly soon. So we'll report back on our opinions on that. And then the last thing before we take just a quick break, there were a couple of new rule changes going into this season. Not a ton, and of course not the ones that we've complained about and talked about ad nauseum. But we've got 4 new rules really of note that have changed. So there's an addition to the coach's challenge, which love-hate relationship, right? Like, do we need to really keep adding more? Whatever. So this one's in relation to the coach's challenge now will be permitted to take down a penalty for a puck out of play. So again, this is kind of, if it goes out, and we've seen this, right? Was it a pervasive problem?
I think it was enough of a problem.
You think so?
Enough of a problem that they felt that this needed to be implemented because the officials simply could not look up at the Jumbotron or their iPads to see that this puck actually deflected off something before.
I thought it was reviewable though last year.
But maybe now, if you really wanted to correct yourself, so now this is a rule that they have to abide by,
right?
And a coach will now be able to challenge when they themselves are behind the bench and they pull out their iPads and they look at the play and they see that it's been deflected, off a player's stick, off the glass, or off the boards. Yep. They can't just arbitrarily, or they shouldn't arbitrarily challenge.
Right.
That call. It's like if it sails over the glass, it's a penalty. We all know that.
Yes. Yeah. So another one, this one's very esoteric, face-off procedures. So there's been, I know this, I think, has been a complaint amongst players when it comes to face-offs. So a number of years ago, they changed the rules where the defending team in that moment, they could get, chucked out or get the warning if it's almost like a false start, if you will. And now the offensive center could also receive a warning. So it's a little bit more even in that case. Unsportsmanlike conduct for players sitting on the boards. Again, I understand this one is a bit of this is a safety issue. So, when it's a legit safety concern, I'm not going to argue with it. Again, this one, I don't know how pervasive the problem was, but whatever.
I looked at that one and said, really, we need to make a rule about this? Does this happen?
That's kind of what I was saying. Yeah. I mean, maybe it's just because, I'm watching most of those games on TV and I'm not looking at, I can't see the bench to see how frequently this is happening. So I don't know. But so that can now be, there's a warning, and then a second time it's a penalty. So the one I know that you've got opinions on, line change following a dislodged net. So there will be an adjustment to this rule so that the defensive team cannot make a line change in the event its goaltender accidentally dislodges the net. So this is basically saying, hey, we don't want you to get a free line change because maybe your goaltender, dislodged the net to get a break or whatever, right? To stop the play and kill the momentum. So lay it on me, Maria.
So this one is going to drive me a little bit nuts.
Yeah.
So clearly there's an issue and an awareness that there are goaltenders in the league.
Oh, there are.
Who intentionally dislodge the net.
Oh, yes.
In order to stop the play, so as to slow momentum down. Their guys are gassed. Okay, fine.
Who's the
Why
most?
aren't you just issuing a delay of penalty?
Right, delay a game. Right. Yeah.
We need this.
Yeah.
So clearly, you're acknowledging that this is a problem. That goalies are doing this. Okay, just issue a friggin' penalty.
Yeah.
So while I'm glad that this is there, okay, maybe it will allow goaltenders, maybe they'll think twice, because now their guys are not going to be able to get off the ice. But to me, it's like, what are we doing here? You don't even need to do this. You have already,
I know,
a way
this
to
is the
address
NHL
it.
for you,
So,
right?
okay,
Right?
fine. I just read that and I'm like, this is a little bit. Okay, whatever. I guess progress in whatever way, shape, or form.
Yep. Well, it begins, and I'm sure we're going to have a few more complaints about officiating right after a word from our sponsors.
There's nothing like seeing a hockey game live, especially an NHL game. But ticket prices can be outrageous these days. That's why I use the Game Time app. Game Time has tickets for all kinds of live events. Plus, they have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see the Bruins play live even easier. I love how I can get curated deals that make it easier to find the best prices on seats, and I can preview the seat view before I buy. And the lowest price guarantee is huge. You know how hard it is to be able to not spend an arm and a leg at TD Garden. Game Time guarantees the lowest price, or they will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code THPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code THPN for $20. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. The quest for the Stanley Cup starts now. The puck's dropping on the 24-25 season, so get in on all the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bets. Things are looking good for the Bruins for their home opener against the Canadiens. Definitely am going to check that one out. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, and Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball. NFL Plus Premium offer available only to new and former NFL Plus subscribers. Additional NFL Plus Premium terms at nfl.com/term.
So, we played the Panthers. It was a game that was on TV that we watched. Let me say this before I ask you my first question. I had a thought during the game where for the previous 2 seasons, the Bruins were going into the start of the season and nobody had any expectations or they didn't have a ton of faith and the team exploded right out of the gate. They had a good season, but they couldn't go all the way. What if the hockey gods, in their constant desire to play with us, have decided that the Bruins will just do a horrible job when we have high expectations going in, and maybe this means they'll go all the way. Don't know. I'm grasping at straws here.
What is in your cup? What is in your cup that you are drinking right now, my friend?
I did not get enough sleep, let me tell you that. So this is ultimately what I was seeing. And we'll go into our stick taps first because I'm the positive one. Let's start on a positive note and then we can go into
Did you not hear me last night during our live watch party where I was saying I'm not going to overreact to game 1?
No. And that's, yes.
Right?
Nothing to overreact.
It's one game. I do have some leftover concerns.
Sure.
As it relates to this specific team that the Bruins just can't seem to figure out. And old habits.
Yes.
That are carrying forward from the prior season.
So I am starting to think, and I'll be really curious to see how things change next year, or if it's not next year, it might be the year after, because I think this is all tied in with the CBA negotiations that are getting started in the new year. I think that training camp / preseason, whatever you want to call this, is trying to be too many things to too many people, and depending literally on however a particular management group decides to approach it is going to be different from team to team. So, for example, I think the Bruins looked at preseason and training camp as an audition for these new guys, a tryout. And they spent the preseason games doing just that. I think a team like the Florida Panthers spent that time preparing their real team for the start of the season. And so that is kind of what I think I saw in the game, because I don't think the entire team had played together, this full combo of players, because you've got new guys. Like every team has new guys, right? And they're not all new kids because players sign, players get traded. And even when you're a veteran professional, you see this at the trade deadline, and you always see it at this time of year. There is a learning curve for these new team members to learn your system, learn your culture, learn how to work with your new teammates, right? And that takes literal game time, practice time. And I think the Bruins fumbled the preseason and spent way too much time looking at these prospects and not enough time doing their homework and prepping the actual team for the start of the season. How did you, like, what were you thinking?
I hear your point, and I'm not going to dismiss it or disagree with it because there are valid points there. What I will say is there was a core component of this Bruins team that was coming back that had played with each other.
Yes.
Zadorov and Lindholm, while I understand need to learn whatever system the Bruins have, are well-established NHL players.
Yeah.
And so when I look at how prepared and ready the Florida Panthers were from the drop of the puck to the end of that game, they were relentless. They're still relentless.
Yep.
They showed you why they won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Last season.
There
And
was
then
no
I look at what we saw from our established players that had played together for quite some time. And I'm thinking, where is the disconnect here? Why are we not ready? Why are we not ready?
Yeah.
Now, I understand things were a little different in this training camp for the Boston Bruins because they had some openings.
Sure.
Roster openings, and they're trying to determine if any of these younger players are going to strike lightning. So I will give them credit when they made the decision early on in the preseason, knowing that they might have a long drawn out saga with Jeremy Swayman and having to get the players ready that they probably in their minds might have been penciling in as their opening day roster,
right?
And moving those younger players back down to Providence. I wished that there had been more ice time for the core of the team.
Yeah. Yes.
I think that was not utilized effectively. Now, is that why they lost the game last night? I'm not putting it on that. I'm not putting it on that.
Not 100%.
But you're asking the question. And, you know, I still have concerns about the coaching staff as a whole. And I know Don Sweeney doesn't listen to our podcast. I would love it if he did. Because then he could hear me say, Don, please pump the brakes on extension talks for Jim Montgomery until you see results this season. It may be closer to the trade deadline when you see where this team really is or isn't. But let's pump the brakes on having those conversations because, you know, I picked up things from last night's game that were concerns to me last year, and we seem to be carrying those issues forward into the new year.
Yeah. Well, so let's start with our stick taps because I'm sad and I wanna be happy because there are some things that I loved about this game. This game was not a total
No.
Big
No.
fat nothing,
No.
not at
And
all.
and I'm not saying the season's over.
Yeah,
I
no,
saw a lot
please.
of stuff on social
No.
media. I'm like the histrionics after one game. People, it's one game. Yes.
Yeah.
Can you see things that
Yeah.
give you pause to scratch your head because they're repetitive things? Yes. And
Yeah.
I'm going to
Those
talk
are going
about
straight
them.
to the penalty box, straight to jail. But so I think a couple of things from last year that were regularly in our penalty box that immediately were allowed out and have now received a stick tap. For me, the most noticeable thing, and I said it to you like right away, was the defense of not just the captain, but of all players on the team and really standing up for those players. By no means do we on this podcast like promote any sort of gratuitous violence within hockey, but it is part of the culture to a degree where if someone is chirping or at your team or your captain, or they're poking or they're prodding or they're pushing them around, you have to stand up for your teammate and especially for your captain. And typically, what we mean by that is, I like to always call it the extracurriculars. It's a little bit of a face wash, a little bit of a dance that doesn't, you don't have to necessarily go and throw punches, but you got to physically respond in some way. And that was one of the most disappointing things, especially considering the type of captain that Brad Marchand is, not just, all of his good qualities, but of his personality qualities. Like he's the rat, right? He's a physical player. And the fact that last season, it just seemed like nobody was there for him or for even Pasta or other random players. And to see immediately my two most favorite moments, and you got to tell me if there are others for you. These are like my biggest stick taps. When Kastelik went to the penalty box, all the guys then went to the penalty box and gave that man fist bumps, including the captain. And it was led Nikita Zadorov, which I don't know if that was like he went over and then the rest of the team's like, yeah, I'm going to go over. Great job, right? But then the second one was also with Zadorov, where he was participating in some extracurriculars around a little bit of a dance between Pasta and Tkachuk. So, and to see kind of his emotion in that exchange, like he was pissed. And I loved it because I could tell that this new guy, this new player was already hook, line, and sinker, just dug right into this team. And he was all in and was just like, you're not touching my people. I'm going to go after you. Loved to see that. Loved
and
it.
if I'm not
So
mistaken, did he not get a roughing call?
He did. From that.
But that to me is well worth taking the penalty to send a lesson or send a message to not only Matt Tkachuk, but perhaps others that say, okay, you want to take a run at Pasta or Marchand or, anyone else who is, an integral member of this team, then I'm going to find you at some point on the ice.
Yep.
So, yes, I enjoyed that moment very, very, very much because it's been lacking for not just last season, but the season before and the season before that. So, yes, I had that as one of our stick taps.
Yep.
And I'm not quite sure if there was any similar response, however, when that POS Sam Bennett ran into, trucked, use whatever adjective you want, Jonas Korpisalo.
Oh, Korpisalo. There was
a
some
little scrum afterwards, but and you can tell me all you want. It wasn't intentional, but I heard the guys on Nesson. I heard other guys. He he could have stopped. He could have let up, and he chose not to because that's the kind of player he is. Now, is he a good player? He's a good player.
Sure.
He's a good player. But that's the kind of garbage with that Panthers team that the league continues to enable and allow.
Mm-hmm. Right. Was it also Bennett who was chasing down the puck with Marchand and then tried to he had his, if Marchand was kind of a little bit in front of him and he had his arm around him on one side, and what he attempted to do, but also didn't try very hard to not do, was to lift the stick up over Marchand's head, and it bopped him in the head, and he ended up getting a penalty. I don't know if that was Bennett, but I mean, that's just your typical, no,
it's just so.
It's your
I mean, that's a tale as old as time with that team, and I don't understand because they are a very good team. They're a very well coached team.
It's unnecessary.
It's unnecessary. Yeah. It's totally unnecessary. Right. I mean, my God, Matt Tkachuk falls on his ass, and the official sees him on his ass and just assumes that a Boston Bruins player must have knocked him on his ass and sends a Bruins player to the box. So, again, not the reason why the Bruins lost the game, folks.
No,
it's not. And I'm not saying that.
It's the insult to the injury, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what makes a loss to Florida in this way that much more frustrating. But I think for goal wise, we got to see right away some of that magic that we've been told about when it comes to Lindholm and being in the right place at the right time. And he gave an assist to Zacha, which also that to me was a win-win kind of stick tap, because
that connection and seeing a little bit of that chemistry, I think, is a positive, and I have that down as a stick tap connecting for a shorty. It's unfortunate that shortly after that, the Bruins gave up a shorthanded goal themselves.
That was the nail in the coffin. I think
the game was lost in the first period, folks. Don't let the score fool you. The final score was 6-4. It was never that close. It was never that close.
No, and that shorty by Florida is what completely turned the momentum. The Bruins had that momentum. They were moving in the right direction. They were making a game of it, and that shorty just kind of snuffed the life out of the team. But what else? Do you got any other stick taps?
I have a stick tap for the Bruins PK.
Oh yeah, always
has picked up where it left off.
Yes, thank God.
So
thank God. Everyone depended on that,
because Florida was 0 for 6. 0 for 6, folks.
Yeah.
On the power play.
Yeah.
Bruins were 1 for 4 on the power play. I think it was late in the third period. David Pastrnak had a goal with an assist from Charlie Mack, and Charlie Mack himself. So I'm giving Charlie McAvoy a bit of a stick tap, although
you're going to take it right back, because I'm going to take it back.
He got his doors blown off on one of the goals by the Panthers. Yeah, but there's that's going to be a topic of conversation on another pod. But there's a player that, to me, you need to earn your $9 million whatever dollar contract now. Okay. The time is now, Charlie.
Yeah.
So those are my stick taps.
So who or what is in the penalty box? We'll have to try and keep those short, because I know the list is long. And this is only an hour-long podcast.
So there's a lot.
Where do we start?
Where do we start? Power play, meh, still not.
It was what has always been.
Okay. It shows signs of some better movement, but still a bit predictable.
They don't move enough. There's no cycling.
They do not move up. And I would love to, who is it? The players? Is it the personnel? Is it the coaching?
I don't know, because
The
it's been
coach
like
of
this for
this?
like 6 years.
Like,
So I don't know. I don't know. It's terrible.
like honestly, you had 4 opportunities. You capitalized on one, but even if you capitalize on 2 out of those 4, right? Or your power play is buzzing around. Even if you don't score, you're generating momentum offensively. And that is another penalty box for me. Too much, again, last night, and again, what we saw quite often last season, not enough sustained offensive pressure and zone time.
Yeah.
Too much one and done.
Yeah.
Too much one and done.
Especially
And-
for the style of play that the Florida Panthers do, which is basically a smothering tactic. I think coupled with just the overall power play criticisms, I've said this on the pod, I'm pretty sure, and I've definitely said it in the Discord. I'm like, I don't have hate or disrespect for Charlie McAvoy. I want him to be everything that he could be.
Right.
But I have yet to
We've been
see-
told. We
That's
have
what we've
been
been-
told.
right.
We have been told this. This is so we're waiting. We see snippets
We see
of it.
flashes.
We see
Yeah,
flashes,
yeah.
snippets, call it what you will.
Right.
But you're
But I don't
now
know. I don't
you're
know that
now a part of the core. You're a part of the new, right? Core. And the time is now for you.
Right. I don't know that he is capable of being the quarterback on the PP1 that we need him to be. And I've had this question mark in my head going before the start of the season, before this game. And I mean, yes, this is probably some degree of confirmation bias, but that shorthanded goal by Florida was exactly why I have concerns about him being that quarterback on the power play, because they were on the power play. He was at the point and he literally just got robbed and completely outskated.
Well, it's better than
He was
Pasta being at the
standing there.
point. So at least we're making strides in that regard. But I agree with you. I agree with you. And maybe he needs to get his bearings or his footing on having more of, a sense of awareness of what his role and responsibility is as the QB of
Right.
that power play.
He's got to work on the timing. He's got to
Mhm.
break those bad habits. We've seen plenty of times last season where he just holds the puck for one, stick handle too much.
Too long. Yeah.
And being caught flat-footed, he was caught flat-footed because he wasn't moving his feet as part of the power play. And like that criticism alone, again, isn't unique to him, but it was just like, of course they picked him off, and he's not going to catch the Panthers. Like, I just don't think they have the speed that they had before. They replaced it with size. And when you're that enormous, like, yes, your stride can get you further, but you're not really fast, like in the way you need someone to be fast. But besides the power play, and of course, all of the penalties that we kind of already talked about, and the fact that it's just playing the Florida Panthers, Bruins are always going to be behind the 8 ball. I mean, we've talked about it 10,000 times. We don't need to go into that anymore.
Well, but here's what I will say about that. Here's what I will say. You better get this team figured out, because one way or another, you're likely going to need to go through this team again at some point in time if you want to have any sustained success in the playoffs.
Yep.
So they need to get this team figured out.
Yep. 100%. I would say, in terms of the goaltending, Monty's comments about, this wasn't really Korpisalo, I would agree, majority of those goals were, I don't even know.
I'd say half. I'd say half.
All right.
Okay, I'd say half.
You say 3, I maybe say 4, but you're right. Like it's
I'd
questionable.
say half were on the goalie and half was on the fact that their defensive structure was virtually non-existent. And I think that to me was a big disappointment. Knowing what we now have available to us on this roster defensively, the fact that Florida was able to basically skate in there in our own end, untouched, unscathed, to do pretty much as they wanted. And again, credit to the Florida Panthers, because that seems to be part of their game structure, is somehow they have the ability, or at least with the Bruins, to have the Bruins running around in their own end, seemingly unaware or losing their assignments and not boxing guys out and, not winning puck battles along the wall. And so, again, problems that we carried over from last season into game 1 of this season. Plenty of time to get them fixed, but that doesn't mean we're going to ignore them.
Right.
Because they're right there in our face to see and watch. And again, I will circle back to coaching. We're still seeing some of this stuff that we had concerns and that gave us agita last season.
A lot of heartburn. So much.
So, while it's awesome for Monty to stand up there and say, right, this wasn't on Jonas. We just weren't
Some of
good.
it was, but
we weren't good. Yeah, right. We just weren't good in front of him. We didn't coach good enough. You know what?
Right.
Then effing figure it out.
I know.
Okay.
Right. I think, I was watching the game with my daughter, and I love it when, and I didn't love that this happened to the Bruins, but I do love a good example that I can always show her of, you play the man, not the puck. And Brandon Carlo, one of the goals, I don't know if it was the second or the third goal, he was tracking the puck. He had somebody there. He was in the corner of the crease, and Korpisalo was there. And I don't know, all of a sudden, Carlo is turned around facing the puck and not the man.
And not the man.
Don't play the puck. You play the man. It's like your basic Mites hockey lesson right there. And I'm like, that's what I mean. When I say that's what I mean.
Mason Lohrei had a rough night last night. They had a rough night last night.
And I'm not surprised with Lohrei, because I still, for as fantastic as he was in the playoffs, I wouldn't be surprised if we still see a little bit of some of his youth kind of creeping in, because it happened a few times last season too. Not that it's great what happened, but then I'd like to say to Brandon Carlo, well, what was your excuse?
What was your excuse? Because you're a veteran now. Yeah, you're a veteran now. And then hence why you're paired up with, you're Brandon Carlo. You are now Mason Lohrei's Zdeno Chara. So
I know. Yeah. So, well, we don't like to beat a dead horse.
No. And again, it wasn't. Listen, it wasn't the start that we wanted. Okay, it wasn't the start that we wanted. I think my bigger frustration was, how were you guys not hyped up and knowing that team was going to come at you with everything in their arsenal?
Yeah,
and you weren't ready. You weren't ready from the jump. You weren't ready from the jump, and. Jonas, on a couple of occasions, well, more than a couple of occasions, he did make some solid saves. So I'll give him credit for that. He made some solid saves. But there were instances where even he looked like he was having difficulty tracking the puck, and he looked somewhat when a couple of those goals went in quickly, like a deer in the headlights look. Oh, we lost your audio. You're on mute.
Love it's where he was looking for it, and you could tell he's like, I don't know where it is. I don't know where it is.
No. So again, maybe, chalk it up to, I don't know, opening night jitters. My expectation is that we'll see a very different effort and start from this team on Thursday night for their home opener against the Montreal Canadiens. Will we likely see Jeremy Swayman in net on Thursday night?
Yes.
They have a tough stretch coming up here. They have a really tough stretch coming up. So they've got the Habs on Thursday. They have a matinee game against the Los Angeles Kings on
those poor guys still stuck
Saturday.
On the East Coast.
I know. LA Kings on Saturday. Then they have a matinee game against the same Florida Panthers on Monday.
Yeah.
Then they're off to the Avalanche.
Yeah, like a mini Western road trip.
A little mini Western trip. Utah and Nashville before they come home again. I mean, these are not schlub teams that they're playing. I don't know about, Utah and LA, but, you got the Panthers, the Avalanche, the Nashville Predators, the Dallas Stars, and the Toronto Maple Leafs to wrap up your month of October. Folks.
Buckle in, everybody.
Buckle up.
Well, I'm excited to see how they respond. I think how they play the game on Thursday is going to be a lot more, going to give us a lot more information about how this season is probably going to go. But we'll be talking about that next week. So we will be back on Wednesday next week after they've played some more of those games. And make sure that you give us a like and a follow, subscribe to our YouTube channel, check us out on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of those places to stay informed. And we certainly welcome you all to our Discord channel where we have a ton of fun during the game. Sometimes we'll do some watch parties and things like that. So come find us there. We're pretty much tape to tape, MK, or just Bruins tape to tape in all of those places. So give us a follow, like and subscribe, rate us, tell your friends, because we have a really good time and we want to talk hockey with you. So any final words, Maria?
No. Listen, I'm glad we're talking about real games. It's awesome that, Jeremy Swayman signed sooner rather than later, so the team can move forward with the building blocks towards what I still think is going to be a successful and competitive season for the Bruins.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, as always, friends, we'll chat again soon, and go Bees.
Go Bees.